They don't even need a warrant for that. I mean, this is really crazy. I mean, folks, this is bona fide. They're getting rid of the bedrock of the Bill of Rights. First, they told you it was for Al-Qaeda down the road, and now they say, no, it's for you, the American people. And an iron curtain of tyranny is ascending around the world. I want to get into all of the mysterious, what our last guest, Wayne Madsen, was saying is clearly inside job terror attacks in Europe and the Middle East, and all the evidence is there. But first off, Max, what do you think about the bird mystery? Microwaves, fireworks, secret weapons. What liquefies the innards of 5,000 birds, Max Kaiser?
Well, why ask about these birds right off the bat, man? I mean, you know, there's a lot happening in the banking sector. You know, the birds, I don't
Are the birds for the birds? Are the birds?
Yeah, the bees are all dying off. Remember a couple of years ago, the bees started dying. There's another huge die-off of bees. Bees, without bees, there's no agriculture, there's no food, and then you have to rely on people like Monsanto. Birds are dying, the fish are dying. It's industrialization gone crazy. It's pollution. It's killing the natural habitat, and it's causing premature human extinction. That's been the trend. So, yeah, the natural world can only take so much pollution, and then it starts to die off, despite what some new members of Congress might feel is written in some ancient text. If you put a certain amount of garbage into the planet's ecosystem, you will kill the ecosystem.
Well, Max, I agree with you on that, but we're told put a tax on what plants breathe, and in the history of this planet, they know that carbon dioxide has been many, many, many times higher than it is now. Why do they focus on paying taxes to Al Gore and the UN instead of open-air genetic engineering, the German government studies connected to BT corn killing the bees, the electromagnetic studies out of Europe and even the U.S. and Canada, that the electromagnetics are killing trees and grass nearby, retarding their growth. I mean, my problem is government isn't focused on anything that's actually causing problems. They just want to tax what I exhale.
Yeah, the response to this problem, you've got two responses: taxes and carbon trading in the area of carbon emissions. Now, the problem with taxes, as you point out, is if it's going to be controlled by the same corrupt government, then we have no expectations that they would do any better job at collecting any kind of tax in any reasonable way related to anything. As far as carbon trading goes, well, that goes to Wall Street, and Wall Street is going to use it as a scam to pocket themselves billions of dollars and destroy that market as well, just like they destroyed every other market, and just like they're destroying what's coming on with Facebook. I don't know if you saw the news with Facebook, but they just did a deal with Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs now gets to buy $450 million worth of Facebook, totally bypassing the SEC rules and regulations. They're just breaking the law openly. The SEC has said we've got to take a closer look at this. People who follow Wall Street tell you this is completely illegal, what they're doing. They're just allowing folks to cash in on Facebook without giving the public a chance to cash in on Facebook, even though it's the public that has made Facebook the $50 billion company it is by uploading all of their photos and chats and all of the messages that they upload to Facebook. Well, that's worth $50 billion to Goldman Sachs clients. How much is going to go to the people who actually created the value of Facebook? The public, they get absolutely nothing, and it's completely illegal. Don't forget also that Facebook uses Zynga, which is a virtual currency, and Zynga is a new way to load people up with another huge wave of debt. So they're going into a whole new virtual world of debt. Just like Monsanto uses seeds to create agricultural debt, Wall Street uses debt to create debt. Now you've got Facebook who's going to use Farmville and Zynga and virtual currencies to create virtual debt.
Exactly. Seeds were always a ever-replicating renewable resource, but now Monsanto and two other big giants, as part of an admitted strategic takeover program, make them agents of death that take over and infect the rest of the DNA of the planet, of the biosphere, not just mutilating, but irrevocably damaging, and then you've got to buy from them every year. It doesn't continue the life cycle. This is blasphemy according to all laws of nature or any religion. But where are the Christians? The Pope is out now promoting GMO. It's of the Lord. I mean, this is so devilish, what we see.
It is completely devilish. The Monsanto, what they call terminator seeds, are seeds that don't reseed. They don't populate. They don't, dandelions would bloom without seeds that would scatter to create more dandelions. But in this case, we're talking about agricultural products or food. So wheat and other foodstuffs would not bear seeds to regenerate themselves. All that becomes an intellectual property of a company like Monsanto. And when other genetically modified patented seeds blew into the field of a guy who was not growing Monsanto seeds, Monsanto sued him for intellectual property violation because the wind blew their product into his farm without him even knowing about it. So this is what they're trying to control the agriculture, the same way the Fed tries to control the money supply with debt. Monsanto's trying to control the food with terminator seeds and intellectual property seeds. And Facebook now wants to control the cyberspace with virtual debt and Zynga-based virtual currency.
Well, I have an analogy. I have an analogy, Max, because it is a genetic issue. Monsanto, which literally owns the courts, has their former heads as the head of the EPA, the head of the FDA. They've got all the bases covered. Same thing in Europe. They get caught smuggling seeds in, and other companies do, into countries as literal military outposts. And it's the equivalent of this. They come and plant GMO canola right next to your field, or GMO soybeans, whatever the case is. There have been many cases of this, or GMO corn. It blows into your field. They trespass and have planes drop Roundup bombs on it. It kills an area. Then they fly over and see that a few plants are alive. Those were the few that were Monsanto from seeds getting in, or part of their genetics, and then they come sue you admitting that they infected you. That'd be like if a man, a next-door neighbor, moved in, stalked your wife, raped her, and then when she got pregnant, he comes and demands the baby, saying it's his, instead of going to jail. That's what Monsanto does.
Right, and they're doing it on an intercontinental basis. They've totally destroyed large parts of India's agricultural industry. This is why thousands of Indian farmers have committed suicide, because they are sold Monsanto seeds at the point of a gun, and then when they can't afford to upgrade because the seeds don't reproduce, and they are heavily in debt because they have to go in debt to keep buying the seeds. And by the way, the fertilizer, the genetically modified fertilizer, only works with genetically modified seeds. So they get you have to buy the GM fertilizer, the GM seeds, and of course they go deeper into debt, and thousands of them are killing themselves. And this is part of the Monsanto program, is that they're death merchants. And they're far more, if you do, I'll do a little experiment. You can do an experiment right now. They're the Monsanto lawyers are deeply embedded in the internet. Anyone can try this. If you write a blog about Monsanto, they are right on you quickly. They are much more litigious than Exxon or the energy companies. They are really, in my opinion, of all the companies I've tracked over the years, they are the absolute worst.
Well, finishing up with Monsanto and these other big GMO companies, if you go back to Henry Kissinger's State Department Memorandum 200, Kissinger said, we'll use food as a weapon. We'll take over the third world. And, I mean, it's an amazing business model coming out of this coterie of companies. And I guess that's just the way it is. We've just got to submit to it and worship them, and it's wonderful.
Well, it's dead. And, of course, they go in there with this idea that they're saving farmers and they're making food available, and they get them hooked on these intellectual property-protected seeds that they administer like a central bank. It's a currency. It's an agricultural currency, but it's all debt-based. And so you have agricultural debt, you have monetary debt from the central banks, which you cover all the time. You know this very well. Then you have this new virtual debt, which is coming via Facebook, which is now in bed with Goldman Sachs, who is financed with some Russian oligarch people, and they're putting together now a multi-billion-dollar, 600 million user debt farm, a virtual debt farm.
And you predicted that it would be turned into a giant casino gulag. We'll be right back with Max Kaiser with his outlook for this year. Stay with us. Okay, I want to get to your calls. I want to get into what's happening with the economy. But let's get Max Kaiser's 2011 predictions for the economy. Max Kaiser.
Well, my prediction number one, hell breaks loose. That's my number one prediction. Massive chaos everywhere. It's economic chaos and ecological chaos, what I call the eco chaos scenario, EECS, the eco chaos scenario. And they're feeding on each other. So like in Australia, because of the massive flooding, their coal industry is collapsing and the economy is going through a gut-wrenching change, which of course is going to force them to do something silly like increase the money supply, which will only cause more pressure on people to buy precious metals in other places of the world. So the ecology breaking down and the economy breaking down are feeding on each other to create this massive chaotic nightmare in 2011. We're already starting to see that happen. Number two, I think finally you're going to see the silver shorts get their behinds kicked. For example, today is a good example. The price of silver is down 3% or 4%. But when I'm looking at the exchange-traded funds, I don't see any volume. There's nobody actually selling physical silver today. So where does that price action come from? It just comes from the paper market. Nobody's selling their physical silver today. They're just loading the boat with more of these naked short sales coming out of Wall Street again. But I think that this year, this game is going to end because ultimately there's a tipping point. Where I spoke with David Morgan on my show, Kaiser Report, and he reiterated the point that for every physical ounce of silver you take off the market, you kill 100 paper ounces. And that leverage is fantastic. And the bank stole our wealth. Now it's time to take our wealth back in the form of the silver. I think that's going to continue to rise in price, and the price rise is tied to how upset people are going to be. And the greater the outrage, the higher the price will go. House prices look like they're going to another leg down, and interesting now, the commercial real estate is going to go through a gut-wrenching decline. All the malls in America are pretty much empty. Sears, sales are down. Walmart, sales are down. So at the medium to bottom end, retail sales are crashing. All those malls are empty. You see some sales progress in the high end in places like Tiffany because the kleptocrats and the aristocrats, of course, like to buy the occasional bauble. But for the mass consumer out there, sales are definitely down. And, those are my three top picks.
Well, I have to agree with you. I mean, it's mathematically impossible right now to ever be able to pay back the 1.5 quadrillion in false derivatives. But you can see what the system's doing. They're setting up a police state to politically suppress us. They have announced, and I have that report here, that they're starting to seize all or part of pension funds in Europe. That's the headline. I mean, and we know Europe's just a few years ahead of where we're at. And Max, I got to rib you a little bit, but I mean, I know it's tongue-in-cheek a bit, but you live in France because you don't like the police state here. But Europe is basically owned by the cousins of the people, so to speak, that own this country. The same ilk of kleptocratic mafia